So, for the third time in my life, I'm standing at the exact same crossroads. The first two times I chose the safer path, but this time I'm choosing differently. And I don't think this decision is really about changing careers at all. I think it's about finally becoming the woman that I've always wanted to be and that I've really desired to become for a very long time. I remember when I graduated from university in London back in 2009, I had what felt like this huge decision to make. Do I stay in the UK and chase my dream of working in magazines, knowing that I'd probably spend years freelancing, living on very little money, maybe eating ramen, and just doing everything I could to get my foot in the door? Or do I move back home to Bermuda where I'd finally be offered a real job in journalism? One path felt exciting, but the other path felt sensible. I chose sensible. I moved home, and honestly, there were so many blessings that came from going home. But every now and again, I would still wonder, what would have happened if I had stayed? Would my life have looked completely different? Then life moved on, of course. I built a career in journalism. I met my husband, we got married. And then when I was 29, I found myself standing at another crossroads. I had reached this point where I knew that journalism wasn't where I wanted to stay forever. So I started dreaming about what comes next. And I had two completely different ideas. The first one was a coaching business. And even 10 years ago, I really wanted to help women to stop playing small and to start building lives that they were genuinely excited about. And then the second idea was to start a PR consultancy agency. Again, I chose the safer option. And looking back now, I completely understand why. It's because I had just lost my dad. I was grieving. I was still trying to work out who I was without him, and even just as a 20-something-year-old. And at that stage of my life, stability wasn't even a luxury. It was something I desperately needed. So I built that PR business. And you know what? It gave me more than I ever imagined. It gave me confidence. It gave me financial freedom. It gave me the courage to believe that I could actually run a business on my own. Eventually, it even gave us the opportunity to move our family to Southeast Asia. So if you followed me on this channel for a while, you'll know that we've been living here in Bali for 4 years. Our daughter was born here. Our children are growing up here. We've built a life that I'm genuinely grateful for. And I never want this video to sound like I'm dismissing that, because I'm not. That business served me incredibly well. It served the woman that I was. But somewhere along the way, I changed. The business did not change. The woman who needed safety at 29 isn't the same woman who's sitting here at 39, almost 40 years old. Over the last few years, I've started dreaming differently, and not necessarily about earning more money, although of course I want to build a successful business. It became more about the person I was becoming while I was building that life and business that I wanted. I wanted to be someone who was making an impact and living in her purpose and stewarding well. I found myself asking different questions. Instead of asking, how can I get another client? I started asking, what am I actually building? Because if I'm being honest, I realized that I had become really good at helping other people build their dreams. I'd help companies tell their stories. I'd help them grow their brands and launch their ideas. Meanwhile, my own dream was still sitting quietly in the background. It was just waiting. And I don't think anyone intentionally wakes up one day and decides to just settle and think small. I think it happens so much more subtly than that. Life hands us these good opportunities, a new client, a better contract, another project, and more income, more responsibility. And because they're all good things, we never stop to ask whether they're slowly actually pulling us away from the things that are actually on our heart. And so that's exactly what happened to me. Meanwhile, my business kept asking me to make more compromises. It was late night calls because my clients were on the other side of the world. It was tighter deadlines, lower budgets, working harder for work that felt like it was less aligned with the woman that I wanted to become. Then, about a year ago, everything changed. The work stopped, not overnight, but gradually. And then one day I realized I was unintentionally unemployed. At first, I panicked. I questioned everything. I wondered whether I had somehow failed. I kept asking God, what are you doing? Why would you let this happen? Why now? But over the last year, I've started wondering something completely different. What if I didn't lose my business? What if I lost my excuse? Because suddenly I couldn't tell myself that I was too busy. There was no deadlines to hide behind, no client work demanding my attention, no reason to keep saying, I'm going to build my dream life in another chapter when life settles down. Life had settled down, and I was standing face to face with the same question that I had been avoiding for almost 10 years. What are you going to choose this time? I started thinking about Jonah, and no, not because of the whale. The thing that actually struck me wasn't the fish. It was that Jonah already knew what God was asking him to do. He just didn't want to do it. He kept hoping that there might be another way. And I don't know about you, but I think that I've spent years praying for clarity when deep down I already knew what the next step was. I wanted certainty, and faith doesn't actually work like that. Faith rarely gives us the whole staircase. It usually just gives us that next step. And so here's mine. In 4 months, I turn 40 years old. And before I do, I'm finally building the coaching business that I've always been talking about and dreaming about for almost a decade. Not alongside another business as a plan B, not even when the kids are a little bit older, not even when I feel more confident. I'm going to do it now. And this series is called Building My Next Chapter. For the next 120 days, around 17 or 18 weeks, I'm going to be documenting this entire journey. The practical side of building a business, the mindset shifts, the faith, the mistakes, the lessons, the moments that I question every single thing. Because I have a feeling that before I can even build the business that I believe that God is calling me to build, I first have to become the woman that's capable of building it. Do I know if this is even going to work? Honestly, I don't. Will I make mistakes? Absolutely. Will there be days when I question whether I've completely lost the plot? Without a doubt. But I think I'm finally more afraid of spending another 10 years wondering what if than I am of actually failing. And maybe that's why you found this video. Maybe you're standing at your own crossroads. Maybe your dream isn't starting a business. Maybe it's changing careers, or writing the book, or starting a ministry, or going back to university. Maybe it's moving countries like I did. Maybe it's healing your marriage. Maybe it's even something as deep but as simple as having the difficult conversation that you've been avoiding. So I don't know what your next chapter looks like, but I do know this. The safest place isn't always the place that feels the most secure. Sometimes the safest place is simply the place where God is asking you to be. So even if it feels uncertain, even if you have absolutely no guarantee how it's all going to work out, because at the end of my life, I don't want to be known as someone who built a comfortable life. I want to know that I was faithful with what God placed in my hands. And if this business grows into everything I'm praying it becomes, I hope it's never just about coaching. I hope it becomes a community. A place where women stop waiting for permission and stop shrinking ourselves and stop believing that we're too old or too late or too ordinary. And instead that we start to build lives that reflect the gifts that God has already placed inside of us. So over the next 120 days, I'm going all in. I'm going to be sharing the wins, the setbacks, the behind the scenes, the hard conversations, the days I want to quit. Because if we're going to build lives that truly matter, I think we should honestly think about what it actually takes. If you're building your next chapter too, I would really love for you to build alongside me. Tell me in the comments what's one dream that you just cannot let go of. I would genuinely love to know. And if you're here for the journey, I will see you next week. We've got another chapter to build. Bye for now.